Testament say that is true, then like we can say that Harry Potter is true because we have 8 books that say that it is true. So like if it's just the book, the only thing that stands behind the book is the fact that we believe that this book is true. It doesn't mean that.
Is the Bible just as infallible as Harry Potter because we intently believe in it? That's a question or an argument that was raised between this college student and Cliffe Knechtle. Cliffe Knechtle, he is a preacher and a pastor that goes around to college campuses and debates young students and universities. I'm going to ask for support for him because I really love his arguments and his debates that he shares with students, and I just want you to go down and support him. I'm leaving a link in the description below to his exact video and his channel. But that's the main question for the day. Is the Bible just as infallible as Harry Potter because we intently believe in them? Alright, let's hop right into the video.
If your like entire like argument is that we should take this as true because the Old and New Testament say that it is true, then like we can say that Harry Potter is true because we have 8 books that say that it is true. So like if it's just the book, the only thing that stands behind the book is the fact that we believe that this book is true. It doesn't mean that it is true. It just means that we believe that it is so.
Very good. So thanks for asking the question. Why do I trust the New Testament Gospels to give me accurate historical information about Jesus of Nazareth? Great question. Because I have tests that I use on any document that claims to be historical.
Okay.
And I would love to hear your tests after I give you my tests.
Okay.
My tests are 4 in number. Okay. Internal consistency, meaning by that, are there contradictions within the text that point to massive confusion on the part of the author? No, when you read the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you have uniform and divergent details, which I love. Not contradicting each other, but different books containing different details, which smacks of authenticity on the part of the authors. I like that. Second test, literary style. Is the literary style of the document once upon a time in the land of Nod, or is the literary style at this time in this place with these people around, Jesus said this and did that? That is the literary style of the Gospels, historical narrative, eyewitness reportage. Third test, archaeology. Are we talking about Jesus floating a boat out to the island of Atlantis? No, sir. We're talking about Bethlehem, Nazareth, Sea of Galilee, Jerusalem, Rome. Are we talking about Mickey Mouse, Elmer Fudd and his cronies? No. We're talking about Pontius Pilate, Herod Agrippa, Tiberius Caesar, Caiaphas, Ananias. Historically verifiable individuals. Fourth test. Yeah, but the Gospels are almost 2,000 years old. What gives us any degree of certainty that we really have what the eyewitnesses wrote? Today, the Gospels that we have in English are based on over 5,000 Greek manuscripts or pieces of manuscript dated from the 2nd through the 10th century AD, all agreeing to an infinitesimal degree. The evidence is overwhelming.
Is internal consistency. So if I wrote a story with the correct tone, referencing real places, using without contradiction, and I got a whole bunch of my good friends to like write other stories about it, 200 years from now, that's going to be whatever. So those are your tests?
Those 4 tests: internal consistency, literary style, archaeological evidence, and manuscript evidence.
Okay, so what specific manuscripts like are we talking about?
Well, the ones I just mentioned, over 5,000 Greek manuscripts.
Okay, so these theoretical manuscripts that may exist say that Jesus rose from the dead because they said that, like, manuscripts of what? What are they manuscripting?
Manuscripts
History
of Matthew,
or...
Mark, Luke, and John.
Okay,
see, the
so
question is, do we have the eyewitness recounts kept accurately for today?
Okay, so we know that they kept them accurately because they didn't just write a whole bunch of stories.
No, that's not the point I'm making.
Okay, so
the point I'm making is, how do we know 2,000 years after Christ that we have an accurate historical document? That was your question that I'm answering.
Yes.
We're not getting off on all these tangents. You asked a very specific question. I'm answering it very specifically.
And I am very specifically taking down each one of your qualifications for why that is the case.
Literary style,
Right.
internal consistency,
Very right.
archaeology, and manuscript evidence. Those are my 4 tests.
Okay, so internal consistency, right? If we have internal consistency within any story, that would make it like a really good story. Is that correct? So if there's no contradictions inherent with the story, then like you have a great story. That's like the qualification of being a story. Because if you read something and like, wow, this really contradicts what they said in the first book or whatever, you're like, this story sucks. So like, I could say probably that most good literature is internally consistent, regardless of its like historical accuracy or whatever. Number 2, for your archaeological is a hugely interpretive process. So like we could just find this and say, oh man, these hieroglyphs must mean this, but like that's not true. They didn't mean that. We think that they mean that because of our interpretation of what happened in history. We don't know that for sure. And then on your manuscript, whenever you have these 5,000 manuscripts of whatever, it's not like they're copyright laws back then. What if they're just recounting a good story from the time? Like they're like, oh man, this would be great if this happened. So it's retelling of the same stories.
The reason why I disagree with that is the New Testament has the most Greek manuscripts or pieces of manuscripts, over 5,000. And the one who comes second is Homer, and that's only 600. If Homer's story, or I can't remember what it's exactly called. Excuse me, I'll put it up somewhere. But his story, it's a great story. But being preserved to the level of the New Testament, it shows that it has some sort of importance. It's important because it's accurate and it's what really happened. And also how I don't think he really understands that the student doesn't understand that different points or viewpoints are going to be different. Just like if you say let's say there's 3 people in a car crash, and one person says that the person in the car had a yellow shirt, and another person from standing from the side, I think they had a yellow, maybe orange shirt, and another person said, oh, they had a red shirt. That's eyewitness. It's different, but the story revolves around the same exact concept. It's consistent in the fact that there's differences in the text shows that it's even more true. It's truly eyewitness testimony. Let's get back into the video.
Okay, so now what are the tests that you use to determine historical reliability?
They don't. I think that most history probably isn't that reliable, which is why I'm always skeptical of things that I read. I don't believe them because I feel like the degree to which I can be certain is not enough for me to believe them.
He's honest. I gotta give it to him. But completely discounting or not scanning over the Old Testament Greek manuscripts, and then he's going to continue on with his arguments denying that everything else that happened in history is not plausible because I haven't seen it myself. We trust in eyewitness testimony. Everything is eyewitness testimony. Alexander the Great and his conquest, eyewitness testimony. The Crusades, eyewitness testimony. They're all written down. I mean, how can we prove that the colonists came over here and truly colonized, and it wasn't somebody else? It's because it was eyewitness testimony. They wrote it down in history. There's no video footage of that. Yeah, let's get back into the video.
Fair enough. Which means you don't know with any degree of certainty that George Washington was the first president of the United States.
Yeah.
You don't know that Napoleon fought the Battle of Waterloo.
Probably did. I can't say for any degree of certainty that I know that.
You don't know that there was a Nazi Holocaust.
Let's see. Okay. And then, okay.
How do you know they're not lying?
Okay, so that is true, but the lying part could easily go for the lying argument could easily go for you. Number 2, it's not just Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then a whole bunch of people told a really cool story. It's the all the accounts of the soldiers that were there and all these other people that were actually there that can actually give us recordings from the time period. And then, secondarily,
He literally just proved himself and just contradicted the point that he just made. I just wanted to bring that up.
I think that we often like fetishize the Bible to that degree. It's like, oh no, nobody can be wrong about this. This is so right. How can you dare like disagree with that? And I think that whenever we go about trying to test the validity of whether or not this is actually a historical document or not, is not critical enough. Because we say that there's 5,000 manuscripts, but we have not actually read these manuscripts. We don't know if these manuscripts are just like rehashing of the cool story that Matthew and the bros wrote.
It is my privilege to debate Muslim professors on university campuses.
Great.
I can promise you I would never look into the face of a Muslim and say, you know, the evidence is Muhammad never lived.
I mean, but
That is so naive.
Okay, so
That is so dishonest intellectually.
Okay.
The overwhelming evidence is Muhammad lived. He was a
Number
real
one-
space-time person, and we have a very accurate presentation of Muhammad's beliefs in the Quran, which has been carefully preserved over the past 1,500 years.
Okay, number one, ad hominem attacks are like really low. Number two, especially with regards to calling me like naive. So let's not resort to that.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I said I debate
Implication
Muslim
and rhetoric count.
professors.
Number two.
And if I were to say to a Muslim professor or any Muslim, I'm sorry, you don't have enough evidence that Muhammad really lived.
now you're
that
saying
shows
that
a
I
disrespect for all of the evidence that indeed Muhammad was an historical person.
Okay,
but
so
for
now
them it works though. But
Pardon?
But for Muslim people, it works for them. So
No, that is not.
no,
That is
okay,
not the
but
argument of my Muslim
No,
friends.
no, no.
But
Okay, so you're saying that I can't disagree with you because
didn't
it'd
say
be
that
disrespectful to
I
disagree
said
with you?
that you have not produced yet for me a better set of tests that you use to determine historicity. And what I've heard you say instead was, you haven't answered my question about what are your tests that you use to determine historicity. Instead, you've said, I don't think we can know history. Fine. So I'm telling you, I totally disagree with you. I think historical knowledge is legitimate and valid. And when I debate Muslims, I'm not going to go at the angle of, well, you know, can't know whether Muhammad really ever lived. No, the overwhelming historical evidence is Muhammad really lived. I disagree with the man, but to try and maintain that Muhammad never existed, because I don't have enough historical evidence, is intellectually dishonest. Because there's more than enough historical evidence that Muhammad was a real historical person. That's all I'm saying.
But from their perspective, it's true to them.
That's
so
not the issue we're talking about.
But it does have, because your two eyeballs are perspectives.
Okay, that's great.
This guy in the blue thinks that he's a relativist and thinks everything is relative because it works for them. That's what he's trying to get out to them, and it might be offending to somebody. That's what might be saying in the background. But we're talking about this college student and the black. That's who we're talking about.
Those are two different perspectives.
It is.
Okay, so for number one, I could use your test.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. So if I use your test, I can come up with something else that meets your definition of historicity.
I sure hope you can. You got a history department here. I sure hope you accept historical knowledge
But
as a
should
legitimate
we
form of knowledge.
believe the
You guys are
fact-
paying a lot of money to take history courses.
Okay, but
You better not walk into your history class and say, you know, this is all bunk, because you can't know anything historically. That would be a little naive, I think.
So if we believe everything that we are presented in such a way that you define like as historicity, we then should believe that Washington was our god because he did something like insurmountable as whatever. I don't understand where you're drawing the line.
He's starting to break down here. I can agree with Cliffe. What? He's trying to bring up a comparison. And what the college student is trying to do is use the same argument tactic Cliffe does and try to copy it. And is trying to make up a story to match his facts instead of just straight up throw out facts.
at where you're supposed to be going.
George Washington never claimed to be God. He claimed to worship God.
Okay, so Jesus just claimed to be God.
Yeah, he did.
Okay, great. So if Jesus just claimed to be God, and we have no verifiable way to prove that such is the case.
Well, if he rose from the dead, don't you think that's solid evidence that he's not blowing smoke when he claims to be God?
I think that the fact that he raised from the dead is not verifiable. I'd say that I'd be really questionable of George Washington if he said that he raised from the dead too.
Well, so would I. Because the evidence is Washington died and stayed dead. Doctors tried to keep him alive, but they didn't succeed. Jesus Christ died, but 3 days later, he rose from the dead, and over a period of 40 days, over 500 people see him at different times in different places, risen from the dead. It's pretty impressive.
Okay.
And they died for it. They were martyred for it. And hypocrites and martyrs are not made of the same stuff. Hypocrites and martyrs are not made of the same stuff. These guys said, we saw Jesus risen from the dead, and they died for what they claimed to have seen.
I like to say that a liar and someone who's telling the truth, I agree with him, are made of the same stuff. Because if you claim to see something, and Roman soldiers are telling you, Caesar is Lord, say that, and live, or say Jesus is Lord, and die. And then they said, sorry, I seen Jesus rose from the dead, I can't. That gives you extreme credibility to your claim. And the only way someone who lies and dies for it is what they truly believe is true. I don't think many people have gone to the grave for a lie unless they really, really believe that it's true.
Okay, great. That is fantastic.
I'm glad you believe that.
Even
Now go on with your faith in Christ.
Okay, so no. What I'm saying is that even by your own standards, it doesn't make any difference. Like, it does not make a single bit of difference. If you can't, even by your own test, can't verify the fact that it is a historical document, then that does not make any difference. With beyond reasonable doubt, and there is, reasonable doubt to be sure.
Oh, sure, I struggle with doubt. We all struggle with doubt. If you don't struggle with doubt, you're brain dead, probably. So everybody struggles with doubt. The question is, what do you do with your doubts? I hope you allow your doubts to motivate you to study more carefully, to question more deeply, to look at options. Now, I hear you saying, beyond reasonable doubt. Okay, so anybody who says to me, the reason I can't put my faith in Christ is because I can't see evidence beyond reasonable doubt that point to him being reliable, so I don't believe in him.
Okay.
Fine. Then please tell me, who or what are you living for? And then second question, what's the evidence in which you are living for is beyond reasonable doubt?
Okay, so there are three things. Number one, I never ever claimed that the reason why I would not believe would be because I don't believe that these are historical texts. I'm saying that because we can't verify that these are historical texts, that's a reason to doubt, but that is not the reason I am saying that I do not or would not believe. And I think that by saying that there is no other reason to believe is inherently close-minded, and what you're trying to promote is this open-mindedness of accepting of Jesus and all this other stuff, but your rhetoric points otherwise. The way that you speak about the subject, the way that you talk about the subject is inherently disenfranchising to people who are do not necessarily agree with you.
Well, if I've offended you in any way, I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend you.
I'm not offended.
Okay, good. So what's your point?
I mean that there's people probably over there that are offended because they're.
I don't care that they're offended. That's not what I'm saying.
But
what are you saying? Let's clarify, please, so I understand.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that the assertion that I was the person that said that I'm the person that says that the fact that I cannot verify that these are historical texts means that I disagree, that I defer agnostic or atheist is wrong. I am saying that we can go back and look at manuscripts from a whole bunch of other people and find that it was wrong. Like, we could find that out, that it is wrong. And we do that on a consistent basis. We find out that what we know is wrong, whether that be from, whether that be in science or whether that be in society. We find out continuously that what we thought was true was false. And I'm saying that if we cannot do that now, then we cannot do that at all. We cannot do that at all with somebody who claims to be God.
Right. And if it can be shown that Jesus did not rise from the dead,
so
faith in Christ is idiotic. But if the evidence is he did rise from the dead, then faith in Christ is wise.
Yeah, I think that's a huge straw man argument, and like putting.
Straw man?
Yeah.
In what way?
Yeah, that'd be. I'd never said that belief in Christ was idiotic. And like.
No, I said it.
Yeah, I realize that you said it, but like the rhetoric he uses is very like inflammatory towards anybody who does not believe.
It's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15. In 1 Corinthians 15, the Apostle Paul says, if Jesus Christ is not risen from the dead, we are fools for believing in him. So I'm just repeating his argument. But if Jesus Christ has risen from the dead, then faith in Christ is very wise.
All right, and we know this because a book that was written 2,000 years ago, and a whole bunch of other people like the book a lot.
No. He's appealing to logic.
Logic.
Work it out. Parse it out. If you die and rise from the dead, I promise to listen very carefully to everything you have to say.
Really?
Really.
Okay. So I'm going to just stock my heart.
Pardon?
CPR, and then you listen.
If you die, are medically dead, 3 days in the tomb, and you rise from the dead, I promise to listen very carefully to everything you have to say. Why? Because the evidence is you are amazing.
I am God. The evidence is that I am God.
No, the evidence is you're amazing, that I'll listen to you.
Okay.
And if you tell me you took this neat drug and that you tricked the medical profession and you weren't really dead, but you resuscitated, then that's one thing. But if the evidence is you really were dead, and then you come back from the dead, I will be very impressed.
But if I tell you afterwards that I'm God, then who do you know? I am God.
Yeah, and if you tell me that you're God in human form after you rise from the dead, I will be prone to believe you.
Great.
So go ahead and do it.
That is fantastic.
Okay, I think. What if we took stem cells from him and cloned him? Would that make sense?
I don't care about stem cells.
But I do. But I'm saying you're just being like him. You're not open to anyone else's. So it's
just like, okay. So stem cells, great. I believe that it is definitely medically possible in the future to live forever, but like not right now. You're right. Like right now, no, there's no way. We are done for right now. I think that in the future, I think that it's a vast misstep to think that we will not progress to the point where that is possible. And I think that humans are progressing to that point, and probably will eventually.
Okay. I'm not going to bank my life on it, but okay.
There you go.
I need more evidence.
Need more evidence?
See, that's why I find a gentleman like you, your thinking, to be fascinating. You tell me that you can't believe in Christ because there's reasonable doubt. But then you go on and say, but it is possible, very possible, that we human beings are going to be able to advance scientifically and medically to the point where we're going to live for eternity.
So you're
going to convince me that that's not beyond reasonable doubt.
Okay, so your evidence is empirical.
Ay.
Okay, no, so your evidence is empirical. You're saying that 1 out of 1 people die, right? It's an empirical proof.
I'm saying the evidence is the statistics on death are overwhelming.
Okay, great.
1 out of 1 die.
Okay, that is empirical evidence. Okay, so this guy comes up to you, right? And he goes, give me your money or I'm going to shoot you. And you go, nah, you won't shoot me. I've never been shot before. So, like, you're saying that whenever you are, because every single person up to this point has died, then that is the case forever. But, like, you have never been shot before up to this point, so now you're saying that I will not get shot in the future because of the fact that I have not been shot in the past.
I can promise you, sir, I would never say or believe that I'm not going to be shot in the future because I've never been shot in the past. I don't understand what you're trying to say.
I'm trying to say that you're basing your entire argument on the fact that we will die in the future on empirical proofs. And empirical proofs are inherently false. Like, they're unverifiable.
I never used the word empirical.
You're right, you didn't, but the form of the argument you used was empirical. Trust me.
No, I'm not going to trust you.
All right, great. Don't trust me.
Okay?
Well, maybe then like we need to like have a like some discourse on like empirical evidence and,
Right.
and empirical proofs. So
So define empirical proof.
okay, so empirical proof is an analysis based on previous experiences. So like it's anecdotal basically. You're saying that because something happened in the past, it'll happen in the future. But that is, I'm using the inverse of that to prove that it is false. Yeah.
You've lost me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm not very smart, okay? So I haven't been able to understand what you've just said.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I mean, I'm sure he knew. He at one point he knew what he was talking about.
I still do know what I'm talking
But
about.
I mean, but from his perspective, he didn't understand it.
Okay, that's fine.
It's funny
Right, now,
too.
what do you think about Jesus Christ?
What do I think about Jesus
Yeah.
Christ? If he existed, he was a really great guy.
Why do you think he was a great guy?
I think that, okay, so if he existed, he was a really great guy. Because I think that he spread a lot of messages that were really cool. Like I agree with a lot of the stuff he says.
How do
I
you
don't
know
think
what
he's
he
God.
said?
What?
How do you know what Jesus said?
What he is supposed to have said. I'm sorry.
Okay, good. I like that consistency. So you really don't think that Jesus really lived?
I don't know that he lived, but if he did live, I'm making the concession that if he did live, like a lot of stuff he said was really cool. Some of them I don't agree with entirely, at all. So, like I can't invest myself fully. But if he lived, I think that he was probably a really good guy.
Right. But when you read his teachings, what becomes clear is he says not follow my teachings as much as he says follow me. He says put your faith and trust in me. What do you think about that?
I think that I don't think that that's wise ever.
Okay, why?
I think that placing your faith in somebody else can like almost invariably lead you astray.
Placing your faith in somebody else invariably leads you astray?
Almost invariably. I'm not going to make like grand sweeping arguments like that, but I think that I definitely won't. I think that what was more important is the message that he spread. Like I just disagree with him on that point. I think that it's more important to agree with the message that he sent out than it was to agree with him.
I like to comment on that level of thinking. I mean, he doesn't think it's good that you shouldn't put your trust and faith in anyone. But I'd also ask the same question. So, you don't, when you go get your drink at at Burger King or at Walmart at the gas station, do you chemically analyze it to make sure there's no poison in it? That there was not some bad batch? You don't pull out your chemistry set to drink a soda. Or when you go home, you don't think that your family members are going to decide to kill you that night. You don't check their purses and check their pockets or check their text messages to see if they're going to kill you that night. No. You put your faith and trust in that certain person. You can't just completely deny that person, or you can't say you don't have faith. Everybody has faith. Because if someone doesn't have faith, they'd check every single thing they do. They'd check all the screws, nuts, and bolts inside of a chair. They'd check every single pixel on a screen or every single time that this monitor or this PC boots up. They check that. They check the pen that they're working with. They check the paper and make sure it's not able to explode or something. I don't know, but I just can't align with that thinking. Everybody puts faith in something, whether it be an object, a person. Everybody does. You can't just say you don't have faith.
Well, I personally feel that you are putting a tremendous amount of faith in the professors at this university because someone is bankrolling a very fine education for you, and you obviously are exerting yourself and working pretty hard to get a degree from this fine institution. So I think you have tremendous faith in other people.
So, tying all this together, I just want to bring up a part in John chapter 20, verses 24 through 29. I just want to read this. Basically, this is the right after Jesus' resurrection, and this is the period of time of 40 days where he was walking the earth after he's been resurrected. And this is after pretty much the disciples have seen him, and except for Thomas. And now Thomas was doubting the other disciples after they told him that they've seen the Lord. So I just want to bring this out now we're going to read. Now Thomas, one of the 12, the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see his hands, the mark of the nails, and place my finger into the mark of the nails, and place my hand into his side, I will never believe." 8 days later, his disciples inside again, Thomas with them, although the doors locked. Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." And he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands, and put your hand and place it in my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, You have believed me because you have seen me. Blessed are those who have seen me and yet have believed." I love this part in John. First of all, Thomas saying, "My Lord and my God." He's claiming that Jesus is God. But he's also talking about doubt. We all have those doubts, man. We all do. We all struggle with it. And in this video today, this young man, he had incredible doubts. Doubting even history itself. But us as Christians, we believe even though we haven't seen Jesus' resurrection. He said, "Blessed are us," or "Blessed are you, who have seen," or who hasn't seen, yet still believes. I love that. And ask that we keep our faith and trust in Him. And if we have doubts, we go back into the Scriptures, read the Psalms, read the Gospels, read the accounts, and who we are really putting our faith into. Who's this man who is also God and who also claimed to be God? Who is this man that we're truly putting our faith into? I ask that you question that today. And thank you guys for watching. And I'll see you guys in the next one.